My mom used to say to us all the time, you don't want your husband to leave you because you're an unclean woman. It was always like that. I'm telling you,
Okay.
there's no filter in the Latino culture. When it comes to your mom teaching you these things, she will shame you. And shame is the only tool to learning. So you always had that paranoia. Oh my God, everybody's gonna find out that I am a dirty woman. I can't be like this. I need to be very clean. So you were always shamed for that, and you were always warned that that could happen.
So you said shame. What you said that was the teaching tool. It wasn't anything else. It was shame.
Yes.
It was like,
yeah,
this, then,
yeah, just shame. Well, like with with a lot of things. So in the Latino community, we have this thing, this gender dynamic of masculinity and femininity, where it's called like Marianismo and machismo. And so like Marianismo is like being as close to Mother Mary as possible, which I'm sure, as you all know, is next to impossible and cannot be done. And so like that's where cleanliness comes in, but it's also where like SLUT shaming comes in. Now, some of this stuff was good, but some of this stuff will put you in therapy too, that you have to like kind of get over and like work with shame. And like in regard to cleaning, it was good, but sometimes you want to be excited to have people over instead of being stressed out because your mom wants the house A1 perfection, like nobody's living there. So there's benefits and there's drawbacks too. And then I feel like this is my interpretation as machismo, because a lot of times people complain about toxic masculinity, and I'm like, well, I mean, we have like, I don't think that's what this is, but like I think daughters are held under higher scrutiny than sons. Like your son can do no wrong. You know what I mean? And there's other things too, like some chores, I don't know about you guys, but some chores were for daughters and some chores were for sons.
Definitely. Even the last time I went to PR was to take care of my mom, recovering from her surgery. And you could even see, when we were taking care of her, most of my cousins and my uncles came. Nobody had to tell us anything. And that's something I started observing after being here for almost a decade. I was like, it's so crazy how everybody falls in place. We were all in the kitchen, dicing the fruits and prepping the meals and taking care of mom and doing stuff. And the guys were outside making sure the plumbing was working right, and, doing the gardening and the watching and whatever. So it's almost like you're already programmed to be this way, and it keeps being passed down because children start being trained this way. It doesn't, I think the concept of teenager doesn't exist to many Latinos. At least it did not exist to me.
Interesting.
You didn't have a space to be a teen. That when people say, oh my God, I had a space to do all of these things and just exist and float. I didn't have that luxury. It did not.
I can say that wasn't my experience either. As a Black woman, that's certainly like, I mean, when you talk about, chore schedules and the whole program you had to go through anytime somebody came over, it's like, I identify with that. That's all I can say. Like, stories, like, I totally get that. So, it's quite interesting.
The shaming concept that Denise mentioned, even at my age, I'm 56 years old right now. I go home and I got to make sure that I'm from top to bottom, I look okay. Because if I don't, that my mother is going to look at me from top to bottom top, and she's going to have something to say if I'm not wearing the appropriate stuff. So it's part of the culture, that shaming thing, that you got to look pristine, because then your mom is going to call you out on it.
So would you ladies
chip nails? The whole thing with chip nails, is better to not have nail polish, ladies, than to have a chip nail. Especially when your mom is a Latina, because she will tell you and you will never hear the end of it.
Wow. That's crazy. Now, would you say, okay, because it sounds like at one end, the shaming, I guess, helped as far as being productive in certain ways, cooking, cleaning, knowing how to present yourself a certain way, knowing how to, I guess, gatekeep certain conversations so you wasn't putting your business all out in Front Street. So these are all really good skills that can come in handy. But then there's also the psychological effects that, Ali mentioned, where it's like you grow up in a shame-based environment that can be incredibly crippling to a certain extent. So would you say one that you think shaming was more helpful than not, or do you think that there's another way that you can help school somebody, help her to be a feminine woman, help her to be a culturally centered Latina woman, and not have to be in therapy for years to with shame? Like, if there's another way to do that.
I think that, that was a very old school concept, and I don't know that it necessarily translated well for me, because I was the kind of kid where if you just explained to me why I was doing something wrong, I would respond to that. Whereas like if you shamed me, I was more likely to act out. So I think for me, in a lot of ways, it was a net negative. And, I think there's actually a lot of Latin women, because the SLUT shaming is actually really big, right? And it doesn't matter if like the adult women are doing things that they shouldn't be doing too. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's just like one of those things that that can be a problem. But there's some adult Latinas too that still kind of struggle with, well, even though I had that experience, how can I have a healthy sex life in adulthood and a marriage and things like that. So I think that there's, pros and cons, but I think that was an old school tactic that's not going to translate well for like my generation of Latino, like a millennial. And obviously it's not going to fly for like a Gen Z Latino. I have no idea how Gen Z is going to go. I hope they turn out okay.
Yeah, it's like you can hope and pray.
That's a tough order. That's a tall order. Look, but I'm sorry, but it is true. I would say, look, I'm gonna share my experience. My parents, after 30 years together, decided to divorce. I was the little one. I was the baby of the family. So I was 16 when they decided to divorce. And watching this whole dynamic of how the whole family, because when you marry, at least in the Latino culture, two families come together, and because we have this familial spirit, and every holiday that we celebrate, every activity that we observe brings family together. It's designed to make families interact. Even when you present your daughter as a teenager at 15, that is made for the family to acknowledge, hey, this girl is now a lady. She's stopped being a girl. But it brings the whole family together. So when my parents divorced, watching how my mom was shamed for make that decision, and they were pushed to come back together, to the point that they had been separated and divorced for years, but they lived 2 houses away from each other. They still stay in touch with one another and what each one is doing. My mom never remarried. My dad did remarry 10 years later.
Okay.
So the chain, to a degree, I would say, you have to evaluate. I needed therapy even for certain aspects related to shame and other things. But I would say that watching the opposite of shaming, and seeing the amount of long-term therapy that will be needed if shaming was replaced with something else, I'd rather take the therapy that comes with shaming tactics than the one that comes with the liberalism that we're seeing replacing the shame. We need to bring shame back. That's just my opinion, because it worked for me and it made me stronger, more durable, even as a woman, as a wife, and now as a mother. So definitely, I think shaming works. Don't change anything about it. Just teach kids how to overcome it, because the world will shame you with the results you get, by the decisions that you make. So why not expose your children very early on in home to shame? So does that make sense?
I agree with Denise. In fact, we don't use it with our Gen Zs at home, but we are seeing the huge influence feminism is having on them through school, through social media. And we're having, it's 4 of us women, 4 sisters. and my three sisters have children. I never had children, so I watch my nieces and nephews. But we do see the influence that feminism is having on the girls, especially. It's a daily battle about what they think life should be and what we, more traditional think about even the attires they wear, what they wear. They, would let them know that it's not a good idea to show as much skin. And their response is, no, the boys are supposed to not look, even if we were walking around naked. So that's where the back and forth comes in. And it's really trying. And it has gotten to a point where I think, God, I don't have kids, because it would be a daily battle if you had kids in the modern world.
Allie, what are your thoughts?
No, I just had a very negative experience with shame, but like some of the stuff is good, some of the stuff is bad, some of it's raising children, some of it's, abusing children. I'm just going to be blunt about it. Like I think that there are some things that made sense for our grandparents to do because their only concerns was, are they healthy? Are they fed? Do they have shelter? Do they have clothes? And then I think it just kind of changed. So I think that I just happened to be a child who was born with a temperament that was too sensitive for shaming. But at the same time, like if you're going to shame me, then you need to be a woman that I look up to. You cannot be out here in the streets and then get upset with me when I'm copying you because that's all I know. That's my only pushback. And I'll give it up to my grandma. Like Abuela was holding it down. Like she's I can look up to her. But, I think there's some things that happen with the Americanization of Latinas. And I think, for Puerto Ricans, I think it was more of the Gen X population, because I'm not the only daughter that kind of, struggled in that way. I would hear it from my girlfriends in school. But yeah, I mean, grandma was holding it down. But, feminism, I think, is pervasive. And I see it even kind of in some family things, right? So my grandma, she loves cooking. Like it's her jam. It makes her happy. She has a big, what is it? It's cast iron. It's steel, but it's a big pot, right? She makes a big pot of rice, only about two people in the house to begin with. So I don't know why she's making this giant pot of rice, but she likes cooking and she cooks every day for my grandfather. He's retired,